The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I kept my hands wrapped around the paper cup anyway. The cafe in Coral Gables hummed with afternoon energy, the kind of place where people came to be seen rather than to actually drink overpriced lattes. I didn't fit here, hunched over my laptop in the corner booth, translating technical documents for a pharmaceutical company that paid barely enough to cover rent. My back ached from the weight I carried now, 5 months of it pressing against my spine no matter how I shifted in the uncomfortable wooden chair. The maternity jeans I'd bought secondhand dug into my sides, and I'd stopped trying to hide the swell of my stomach under oversized sweaters. There was no hiding it anymore. The document on my screen blurred as I rubbed my eyes. Medical terminology in 3 languages, due by midnight, and I was only halfway through. My phone sat face down beside my laptop. 7 missed calls from my divorce attorney that I couldn't afford to return, because every conversation cost me another $100 I didn't have. Amanda? The voice cut through the cafe noise like a blade. I knew it instantly, would have recognized it in my sleep, in my nightmares. I looked up slowly, dreading what I'd see. Ryan Cooper stood 3 feet from my table, his blonde hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes scanning me with an expression that started as surprise and curdled into something uglier. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car, navy fabric stretched across shoulders he'd always been proud of. The woman beside him was everything I wasn't anymore. Thin, polished, wearing a burgundy dress that clung to her body like a second skin. Wow. Ryan's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile on anyone else. I almost didn't recognize you. My throat closed. I hadn't seen him since the day I'd signed the divorce papers 8 months ago. Hadn't wanted to see him. Had rerouted my entire life to avoid this exact moment. Ryan, my voice came out steady, which felt like a victory. I didn't know you came here. I don't usually. His gaze dropped to my stomach, lingered there with an expression I couldn't read. Clearly you do, though. When did this happen? The woman beside him shifted, her manicured hand sliding possessively around his arm. She looked me up and down with the kind of assessment women give each other in bathrooms and parking lots. The silent calculation of threat level. I apparently didn't register as one. I should get back to work. I reached for my laptop, but Ryan moved closer, blocking my exit from the booth. Come on, don't be like that. I'm just surprised, that's all. He glanced at his girlfriend, then back at me. You look different. Different. I repeated the word flatly. Yeah, you know. He gestured vaguely at me, and I watched his face arrange itself into false concern. You've gained weight. A lot of it. I mean, I know the divorce was hard, but stress eating isn't the answer, Amanda. You should really take care of yourself. Heat flooded my face. The cafe seemed to shrink around us, other conversations fading into white noise. I was suddenly, acutely aware of every person who might be listening, might be watching Ryan Cooper tell his fat ex-wife that she'd let herself go. I'm not stress eating. The words came out harder than I intended. No? His eyebrows lifted in exaggerated surprise. Then what's your excuse? Because you used to be so careful about your figure. Remember when you wouldn't even eat carbs after 6? And now look at you. His girlfriend laughed, a tinkling sound that made my hands curl into fists under the table. Ryan, leave her alone. Maybe she's just happy now. Happy. Ryan snorted. Is that what we're calling it? I tried to stand, but he didn't move, his body blocking the narrow space between the booth and the next table. My laptop bag was on the seat beside me, my phone just out of reach. The pregnancy made me slower, clumsier, and Ryan knew it. I could see the knowledge in his eyes, the way he'd positioned himself deliberately. Excuse me. I kept my voice level. I need to go. Where? Got another shift at some dead-end job? He leaned against the table, casual, like we were old friends catching up. Because I heard you're doing translation work now. That must pay really well, judging by everything. His gesture encompassed my whole life. The cheap clothes, the battered laptop, the corner booth in a cafe I couldn't actually afford. The baby I carried alone because the father had signed away his rights the moment he found out. Disappeared so fast I'd half convinced myself I'd imagined him entirely. Move, Ryan. I'm just worried about you. His tone shifted, became almost gentle, which was somehow worse. This isn't healthy. You're eating for 2 now, I guess. But you don't have to eat for 10. Maybe you should see someone. A therapist or a nutritionist or something. My vision tunneled. I was going to be sick. Right here in this expensive cafe with its exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs. I pressed one hand to my stomach, feeling the baby kick against my palm, and wished desperately for the ability to disappear. The lady asked you to move. Either the voice came from behind Ryan, low and controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or something close to it. Ryan stiffened, then turned. The man standing there was taller than Ryan, broader, with black hair and dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He wore a black suit that fit him like it had been created specifically for his body, and there was something in the way he stood, utterly still and completely relaxed, that made Ryan take an involuntary step backward. Sorry, man. We're just talking. Ryan's voice had changed, lost some of its edge. This is my ex-wife. We're catching up. No. The man's gaze moved to me, held for a moment, then returned to Ryan. You're leaving. It wasn't a question. Wasn't even really a threat. Just a statement of fact, delivered in that same even tone that somehow made the cafe feel colder. Ryan's jaw tightened. Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private conversation. The man didn't respond, didn't move. But something changed in the air around us, and suddenly there were 2 other men standing nearby, both wearing dark suits, both watching Ryan with expressions that suggested they'd be very happy if he gave them a reason to do something other than stand there. Ryan's girlfriend tugged on his arm. Ryan, let's just go. Yeah. Ryan forced a laugh that didn't sound convincing even to him. Yeah, we should grab our table anyway. Good seeing you, Amanda. You should really watch what you're eating, though. For the baby's sake. He walked away quickly, his girlfriend's heels clicking against the tile floor as they disappeared toward the back of the cafe. The stranger watched them go, then turned to me. You okay? I managed a nod, though my hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together in my lap. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He gestured to the empty seat across from me. May I? Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to gather my things and leave, to not accept help from a man who had 2 bodyguards and moved through the world like he owned it. But my legs felt weak, and I wasn't sure I could stand without embarrassing myself further. Okay. He sat, movements economical and precise. Up close, I could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his dark eyes assessed me without making me feel judged. He was older than Ryan, maybe late 30s, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove anything to anyone. I'm Joseph. He didn't offer his hand, seemed to understand that I wasn't ready for touch. Amanda. He repeated it like he was testing the weight of the name. That man. Your ex-husband? Yes. The admission tasted bitter. He's an asshole. A startled laugh escaped me, surprising us both. Yeah, he is. Joseph flagged down a server, a young man who appeared instantly at his elbow. Water for the lady, and whatever she was drinking, but hot this time. I'm fine, really. You're shaking. His tone left no room for argument. The server disappeared, returned within moments with a glass of ice water and a fresh latte that probably cost $12. I wrapped my hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into my palms. Thank you. I meant it. For the coffee and for... before. I have sisters. Joseph's expression softened slightly. 2 of them. I know what it looks like when a man is trying to make a woman feel small. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the cafe continued its afternoon rhythm, oblivious to the small drama that had just unfolded. Ryan and his girlfriend were seated at a table near the window, his back deliberately turned to us. Is he the father? Joseph asked quietly. No. The answer came quickly, reflexively. No. The father signed away his rights when he found out. He wanted nothing to do with this. I gestured at my stomach. The swell of life that Ryan had turned into something shameful, something worth mocking in a crowded cafe. Then he's a fool. The simple certainty in Joseph's voice made my throat tight. I took a sip of the latte. Let the heat and sugar ground me back in my body. I should let you get back to your meeting. I nodded toward the table where his men still stood, watching. Thank you again. Where do you live? The question should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt practical. Like he was already planning something and just needed the details. Kendall, it's not far. Let me drive you home. That's not necessary. Maybe not. Joseph stood, pulling a card from his jacket pocket and placing it on the table between us. But I'm offering anyway. My car is outside. I looked at the card. Heavy cream stock, embossed with a name and phone number. No company, no title, just Joseph Rinaldi and 10 digits that felt like a lifeline I didn't know I needed. I drove here. My car is in the lot. Then one of my men will drive it to your apartment. He said it like it was already decided, like my protests were anticipated and dismissed before I could voice them. You shouldn't drive when you're this upset. He was right, though I hated admitting it. My hands still shook, and the thought of navigating Miami traffic while trying not to cry felt impossible. Okay? The word came out small. Thank you. Joseph's car was a black SUV parked directly in front of the cafe, hazard lights blinking like rules didn't apply to it. One of his men opened the back door for me, and I climbed in, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than my entire car. Joseph slid in beside me, giving my address to the driver in that same controlled voice. The car pulled into traffic smoothly, and I watched Coral Gables slide past the tinted windows, everything looking softer through the darkened glass. Your ex-husband. Joseph's voice pulled my attention back. Does he bother you often? No. I haven't seen him since the divorce. I didn't even know he came to that cafe. But he knows where you live. The question sent ice down my spine. No. We sold the house. He doesn't know my new address. Good. Joseph settled back against the seat. Keep it that way. We rode in silence for a while. The driver navigated the streets with practiced ease, and I realized Joseph must make this trip often, must know these roads as well as I did. Maybe better. What do you do? I asked finally. For work, I mean. Import and export. I manage shipping contracts through the port. It sounded legitimate, normal even, but something in the way he said it, the careful neutrality of his tone, made me think there was more to it than that. And you? He turned the question back to me. Translation work? Freelance. Medical documents mostly. Technical manuals. Whatever pays. That sounds difficult. It is. I couldn't remember the last time someone had acknowledged that, had seen the work for what it was instead of treating it like something I did to pass the time. But I can do it from home, and the hours are flexible, which I'll need when the baby comes. When are you due? 4 months. June. Joseph nodded, processing this information with the same calm focus he seemed to apply to everything. The car pulled up outside my apartment building, a modest complex that had seen better decades. The driver parked smoothly, and Joseph's other man appeared with my laptop bag and purse, items I hadn't even remembered leaving at the cafe. Thank you. I took my things, clutching them like armor. Really, for everything. Joseph pulled out another card, identical to the first. If you need anything, if your ex shows up again, if you just need someone to call, use this number. I will. I probably wouldn't, but the gesture settled something in my chest. I mean it, Amanda. His dark eyes held mine. Any time, for any reason. I nodded, then climbed out of the car before I could do something stupid like cry. I made it to my apartment door before I heard the SUV pull away, before I let myself collapse against the cheap wood and finally let the tears come. The card stayed in my pocket, heavy as a promise I didn't know if I'd ever have the courage to keep. 3 weeks passed before I touched the card again. It had lived in my wallet, pressed between expired grocery store coupons and my driver's license, a secret I carried everywhere but never acknowledged. I'd convinced myself I wouldn't need it, that Ryan's appearance at the cafe had been an unfortunate coincidence. Nothing more. Then the envelope arrived. It was waiting for me when I got home from the grocery store, propped against my apartment door like a threat. Thick cream paper, expensive weight, the kind that lawyers used when they wanted you to know they meant business. My name printed across the front in serif font that probably cost extra. I set down my bags of generic pasta and wilting vegetables, hands already trembling as I tore open the seal. The letter inside was 3 pages long, dense with legal terminology I'd have to translate if it were in another language, but somehow struggled to comprehend in English. Ryan was contesting the divorce, claiming I'd hidden a pregnancy during the proceedings, that the child was his, that I'd committed fraud by not disclosing my condition. He wanted custody rights. He wanted child support. He wanted a DNA test administered immediately at a facility of his choosing. The words blurred together as I read through it once, twice, 3 times. Each pass made it worse, revealed new horrors buried in the legal jargon. There was a court date already scheduled, a demand for financial records, threats of perjury charges if I'd knowingly lied about my pregnancy status during the divorce. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up, my knees hitting the tile hard as morning sickness combined with pure panic. The baby kicked against my ribs, probably sensing my distress, and I pressed one hand to my stomach while the other clutched the edge of the toilet. "It's okay," I whispered, though I had no idea if that was true. "We're going to be okay," but I didn't know how. The letter demanded a response within 14 days. It referenced lawyers I couldn't afford and procedures I didn't understand. Ryan knew I had no money for this, knew I'd barely scraped together enough for my own attorney during the divorce. This was calculated cruelty, and it was working. I pulled myself up using the sink, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection. Dark circles under my eyes, hair that needed washing, a face that looked older than 28, the kind of woman who lost battles like this. The card was still in my wallet. I pulled it out, turned it over in my hands, and wondered what kind of help a man like Joseph Rinaldi could actually provide. He'd said any time, for any reason. But surely he hadn't meant this. Hadn't meant getting involved in messy divorce drama and custody fights over a baby that wasn't even born yet. I made it until midnight before I called. The phone rang twice before his voice came through, clear and alert despite the late hour. "Amanda, I'm sorry." The words tumbled out. "I know it's late. I shouldn't have called. But I didn't know who else to ask, and I don't even know if you can help with this kind of thing. But the letter said 14 days. And I don't have money for a lawyer. And I'm scared he's actually going to take my baby even though it's not his. And I can prove it's not his. But proving things costs money I don't have, and—" "Stop." Joseph's voice cut through my spiral gently but firmly. "Take a breath." I did, pulling air into lungs that felt too tight. "Now tell me slowly. What letter?" So I did. Explained about the envelope, the legal demands, Ryan's claims that the baby was his and I'd hidden the pregnancy. My words came out steadier this time, though my hand still shook as I held the phone. Silence stretched after I finished. Long enough that I thought maybe the call had dropped. Maybe he'd hung up and blocked my number, and I'd just destroyed the only connection I had to someone who might help. "Where are you right now?" Joseph asked finally. "Home. My apartment. Send me your address. I'm coming over." "No, that's not necessary. I just wanted to ask if you knew a lawyer who might—" "Amanda." He said my name like a full sentence. "Send me the address." 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I'd used the time to throw on clothes that weren't pajamas and attempt to make my hair look less like a disaster, though the effort felt futile. Through the peephole, I saw Joseph standing in the hallway, still wearing what looked like the same style of dark suit, as if he either owned a dozen identical ones or had simply never gone home. I opened the door. He took in my apartment in one sweep, the second-hand furniture and peeling linoleum, the stack of translation work covering my kitchen table, the baby items I'd started collecting in careful piles near the closet. "Show me the letter." I handed it over, watching his face as he read. His expression gave nothing away, but his jaw tightened slightly when he reached the second page, and something dangerous flickered in his dark eyes at the third. "This is harassment." He set the letter down on my coffee table with careful precision. "Everything in here is designed to scare you into settling or giving up. It's working. That's why we're going to stop it." Joseph pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then looked back at me. "I have lawyers. Good ones. They'll handle this. I can't afford—" "I'm not asking you to pay." He held up a hand before I could protest further. "Consider it a favor. That's too much. I can't accept that. Can you afford to fight this on your own? The question hung in the air between us. We both knew the answer. No, I admitted finally. But I can't just take charity from someone I barely know. Then don't think of it as charity. Joseph settled into my worn armchair like it was a throne, completely at ease despite the surroundings. Think of it as an exchange. I help you with this legal situation, and you help me with something else. What could I possibly help you with? Translation work. Legitimate contracts for my shipping business. I have documents that come through in 6 different languages, and I pay external services that charge triple what they should, and take twice as long. He gestured at the papers scattered across my table. You clearly know what you're doing. Work for me. I'll pay you properly, and in return, my lawyers make your ex-husband's nuisance lawsuit disappear. It felt too easy, too convenient, but desperation made people accept things they normally wouldn't, and I was desperate enough to drown. What kind of shipping business requires 6 languages? The international kind. Joseph's expression didn't change. Import and export through the port of Miami. We handle cargo from Europe, Asia, South America. The documentation alone is a nightmare. And it's all legal? The contracts you'd be translating? Yes, completely legitimate business. He pulled out another card. This one with a business address printed below his name. Come by the office tomorrow. Meet my attorney, review the contracts, decide if you're comfortable with the work. Why are you doing this? Joseph was quiet for a moment, his gaze moving to the baby items stacked near my closet. Then back to me. I told you I have sisters. 2 of them. My older sister, Sophia. She was 22 when she got pregnant. The father disappeared the moment she told him. She was terrified, had no money, no degree yet. Our mother had died the year before. And it was just us. He paused, and something raw crossed his face before he controlled it. I was 19, barely holding things together myself. But I watched her try to do everything alone. Watched her cry at night when she thought I couldn't hear. Watched her get smaller and scared and broken. I swore then that if I ever had the power to help someone in that situation, I would. The honesty in his voice made my throat tight. Is she okay? Your sister? She's a lawyer now. Runs half my business operations. Her son is 16. Plays basketball. Wants to be an engineer. A genuine smile touched Joseph's mouth briefly. She's more than okay. But she shouldn't have had to struggle like that. And neither should you. I looked at the letter on my coffee table, at the threat it represented, then back at Joseph, at this strange man who'd appeared in my life 3 weeks ago, and was now offering me a way out of drowning. Okay, I said. I'll come to your office tomorrow. Good. Joseph stood, pulled a business card from his jacket, and wrote something on the back before handing it to me. That's my personal cell, not the office line. If anything happens before tomorrow, if your ex shows up or contacts you, call me immediately. Thank you. The words felt insufficient for what he was offering. Really, I don't know how to repay this. Work hard, do good translations. That's payment enough. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Amanda? Stop thanking me. You're not asking for a handout. You're accepting help you deserve and agreeing to earn it. There's no shame in that. After he left, I sat on my couch holding both business cards, the official one and the one with his personal number scrawled on the back in neat handwriting. The letter from Ryan's lawyer still sat on my coffee table, but somehow it felt less threatening now, less like a death sentence and more like just another problem that had a solution. The baby kicked, a flutter of movement that was becoming more insistent as the weeks passed. I placed my hand over the spot, felt the small life I was carrying push back against my palm. We're going to be okay, I whispered again. This time, I almost believed it. The next morning, I dressed carefully in the one professional outfit I still owned from my old life, when I'd worked in an office and had business clothes and a 401k. The navy pants were tight around my waist now, and I had to leave the button undone beneath my flowing blouse, but at least I looked presentable. Joseph's office was in downtown Miami, a glass tower that reflected the morning sun and made me feel impossibly small as I approached. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of space where my secondhand shoes seemed to echo too loudly. The elevator took me to the 15th floor. When the doors opened, a woman in her early 40s stood waiting, dark hair pulled back severely, wearing a charcoal suit that was both elegant and intimidating. "Amanda Wells?" She extended her hand. "I'm Sophia Rinaldi, Joseph's sister and the attorney who'll be handling your case." So this was the sister he'd mentioned, the one who'd struggled alone and come through stronger. I shook her hand, noticing the similarities between her and Joseph. The same dark eyes, the same controlled intensity. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for agreeing to work with us." Sophia gestured down the hallway. "Joseph's in a meeting, but he wanted me to review everything with you first. Shall we?" Her office was smaller than I'd expected, but perfectly organized. Windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. Case files stacked with military precision. She gestured me into a chair across from her desk and pulled out a yellow legal pad. "Walk me through everything, from the beginning." So I did. The marriage to Ryan, the emotional abuse that had taken me years to recognize as abuse, the divorce, the brief relationship afterward with a man whose name I'd barely remembered by the time the pregnancy test came back positive, his immediate disappearance when I told him, the papers he'd signed relinquishing all parental rights, witnessed and notarized and filed away in a drawer I tried not to think about. Sophia took notes, asked pointed questions, never once made me feel judged or small. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Your ex-husband has no case. None. The pregnancy occurred after your divorce was finalized. You have documented proof that another man is the biological father and has waived rights, and Ryan has no legal standing whatsoever." She tapped the legal pad. "This is intimidation, pure and simple. He's counting on you being too scared or too broke to fight back. So what do? We respond with overwhelming force." Sophia's expression was coolly professional. "I'll draft a response that not only refutes every claim, but threatens counter-litigation for harassment. I'll include documentation of the biological father's waiver, medical records establishing conception dates, and a formal demand that he cease all contact with you. Will that be enough? It'll be a start. If he persists, we escalate. But most bullies back down when they realize their target has real resources." She pulled out a contract. "Now, for the work arrangement. Joseph mentioned you do translation. We spent the next hour reviewing contracts, discussing languages and rates that made my head spin. The pay Joseph was offering was more than triple what I made from my freelance work. And the contracts themselves seemed straightforward enough, shipping manifests and cargo declarations and customs documentation. "These are all legitimate?" I had to ask. Sophia's expression didn't change. "The documents you'll be translating are legal business contracts. I can't speak to everything that happens in this office, but what you'll be working on is completely above board." It was as honest an answer as I was likely to get. I signed the contract, watched Sophia file it away with the same precision she applied to everything else. "Joseph believes in helping people who deserve it," she said as I stood to leave. "Don't make him regret this investment." "I won't." She walked me to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, my brother doesn't do this often. Offer help to strangers. You must have made an impression." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and left. Joseph caught me at the elevator, appearing from wherever his meeting had been with that same quiet intensity. "Sophia took care of everything?" "Yes. Thank you. For all of this. Stop thanking me." But he said it without heat. "You start Monday. Someone will email you the first batch of documents tonight." The elevator arrived, doors sliding open. I stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby, and watched Joseph's face as the doors began to close. "Amanda," his hand shot out, stopping them. "One more thing. That card I gave you, with my personal number? I meant what I said. Anytime. For any reason." The doors closed before I could respond, and I rode down to the lobby wondering what kind of man Joseph Rinaldi really was, and why he'd decided to save someone like me. 2 months later, my life had developed a rhythm I'd never expected to find comfortable. 3 times a week, I took the bus to downtown Miami, climbed to the 15th floor of Joseph's building, and spent hours translating shipping contracts from Portuguese, Spanish, and French into English. The work was methodical, precise, and paid enough that I'd actually started saving money for the first time since the divorce. 7 months pregnant now. Every movement required calculation. Getting on and off the bus meant timing, planning, accepting help from strangers who held doors and offered seats. My body had become public property in ways that still startled me. People touching my stomach without asking, offering unsolicited advice about what I should eat, how I should sit, whether I should be working at all. Joseph's office had become a refuge from that. His employees treated my pregnancy as unremarkable. Just another fact about me, like my hair color, or my preference for tea over coffee. The security guards knew my name. The receptionist kept ginger candies at her desk for my morning sickness. And Joseph himself had developed a habit of appearing with lunch whenever he noticed I'd skipped it. Today was Cuban from a place in Little Havana that he swore made the best ropa vieja in Miami. He set the containers on the small desk I'd claimed in a corner office, then settled into the chair across from me, without asking if I minded the company. "You're working too hard." He nodded at the stack of translated documents piling up beside my laptop. "I'm working the normal amount. You're the one who gave me all these contracts. Because you're good at it. Sophia says your translations are better than the service we used before, and you finish faster." He opened his own lunch, the smell of beef and peppers filling the small space. "But you should take breaks. You're allowed to take breaks." "I take breaks. You eat lunch at your desk while translating. That doesn't count." I closed my laptop with exaggerated patience. "Fine. I'm taking a break." Happy? Thrilled. But he was smiling slightly, that rare expression that softened his face and made him look younger than his 36 years. We ate in comfortable silence. Over the past 2 months, I'd learned that Joseph didn't require constant conversation, was content to simply exist in the same space without filling it with meaningless words. It was one of the things I'd come to appreciate about him. This ease with quiet. "Have you thought about names?" he asked eventually, nodding at my stomach where the baby was doing what felt like gymnastics against my ribs. "A few. Nothing definite yet." I pressed my hand to the spot where a tiny foot was pushing. "I keep changing my mind. My nephew, Sophia's son." She didn't name him until 3 days after he was born, just called him the baby, until she found something that fit. It was the most personal information Joseph had shared about his family beyond the basic facts I already knew. I'd learned to notice these small offerings, the way he'd occasionally drop details about his life like breadcrumbs I was meant to follow, but not examine too closely. "What's his name?" "Gabriel. He's 16 now, plays basketball, wants to study engineering." Pride colored his voice. "Smart kid. Reminds me of Sophia at that age, stubborn and certain about everything. She seems like she'd be certain about most things. She is. It's why she's such a good lawyer." Joseph finished his lunch, started collecting the empty containers. "Actually, she wants to meet you properly, not as your attorney but as my sister. She's been asking about you." Something nervous fluttered in my chest. "Why?" "Because I talk about you, apparently. Enough that she's noticed." He said it matter-of-factly, like this was normal information and not something that made my pulse quicken. "She's coming by the office this afternoon. If you're still here, maybe the 3 of us could have coffee. I should be finishing the Brazilian shipping contracts." "Amanda." He gave me a look. "Take the break." So 3 hours later, I found myself in Joseph's actual office, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, sitting across from Sophia Rinaldi, while Joseph made espresso at a machine that probably cost more than my car. Sophia had softened since our first meeting, or maybe I'd just gotten better at reading her. She wore less formal clothes today, dark jeans and a cream blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back severely. But her dark eyes still assessed me with that same intensity Joseph had, taking in details I wasn't sure I wanted noticed. "So," she accepted the espresso Joseph handed her. "You've been working here 2 months. How are you finding it?" "Good. The work is straightforward and everyone's been welcoming." "That's not what I asked." Sophia's directness was gentler than it might have been. "I asked how you're finding it. Being here. Working with my brother." I glanced at Joseph, who'd settled behind his desk with his own espresso, watching this interaction with what looked like amusement. "It's been helpful. More than helpful. I don't know where I'd be without the work or the legal help with Ryan. Speaking of which, your ex backed off completely after we sent our response." No further contact, no legal filings, nothing. Sophia pulled out her phone, scrolled through something. His lawyer advised him to drop it, told him he had no case and pursuing it would only cost him money and potentially result in a harassment suit. Relief washed through me, though I'd been trying not to think about Ryan, not to give him space in my head. Good, that's good. It is. Sophia set down her phone. But I'm not here to discuss your legal case. I'm here because Joseph has been talking about you for 2 months, and I wanted to understand why. Sophia. Joseph's voice held a warning. What? I'm being direct. She should know that you've been talking about her, that you care about how she's doing, whether she's eating properly, if she's stressed about the baby, that you've been more focused on one person than I've seen you focus on anything in years. Heat flooded my face. Joseph's expression had gone carefully neutral, but something tense had entered his posture. I employ Amanda. I want to make sure she's taken care of. That's normal. You don't bring lunch to any of your other employees 3 times a week. Sophia's tone was mild, but her gaze moved between us with calculation. You don't ask about their lives, or check if they're tired, or offer to drive them home when it rains. He drives you home? I asked, turning to Joseph. Twice, when there were storms. He said it defensively. The buses stop running reliably and you're pregnant. My point, Sophia continued, ignoring both of us, is that my brother doesn't do this. He doesn't get personally involved. So either you're very good at manipulation, which I doubt, or there's something genuine happening here that neither of you has acknowledged yet. The silence that followed felt heavy. I could hear the espresso machine hissing in the background. Traffic sounds filtering up from 15 floors below. My own heartbeat loud in my ears. I should get back to work. I started to stand, but Sophia held up a hand. Wait. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I'm trying to understand if your intentions toward my brother are honest. My intentions? The word came out sharper than I meant. I don't have intentions. I work here. Joseph helped me when I needed help. That's all. Is it? Sophia's gaze was steady. Because from where I'm sitting, you've been spending significant time with my brother, accepting his help, becoming part of his routine. And I need to know if you're doing that because you genuinely care or because it's convenient. Something hot and defensive rose in my chest. I care about Joseph, as a person who's been incredibly kind to me. But I'm not using him, if that's what you're implying. I'm working hard, translating everything you give me, trying to earn what he's providing. That's not an answer to my question. Sophia, that's enough. Joseph's voice cut through the tension. Amanda doesn't owe you explanations about her feelings or intentions. She's doing exactly what we agreed she would do, and anything beyond that is between her and me. Sophia studied her brother for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair. But you should know, Joseph, that the family has noticed. They're asking questions about the pregnant woman who works in your office, who you bring lunch to, who's suddenly very important to you. Let them ask. They'll want to meet her eventually. Then they'll meet her when the time is right. Joseph's tone left no room for argument. Sophia stood, smoothing her jeans. I'll leave you two alone. Amanda, it was good talking to you. Really. I apologize if I came on too strong. Protective sibling instinct. After she left, the office felt too quiet. I stared at my espresso, watching the crema dissolve, trying to process what had just happened. I'm sorry about that. Joseph broke the silence. Sophia means well, but she can be intense. She's protective of you. I understand that. Still, she shouldn't have put you on the spot like that. He came around the desk, leaned against it so we were closer to eye level. What she said about me talking about you, about bringing you lunch, it's all true. I do care about how you're doing. More than I probably should for someone who's just an employee. My heart was beating too fast. Joseph, I'm not asking for anything. He continued quietly. I'm just being honest. You've been through enough without me adding complications. But I want you to know that Sophia was right. You're not just an employee to me anymore. I should have said something safe. Something that maintained the careful distance we'd been keeping. Instead, I heard myself ask, then what am I? I don't know yet. His dark eyes held mine. But I'd like to find out. If you're interested. The baby chose that moment to kick hard enough that I gasped, pressing my hand to my stomach. Joseph's gaze dropped to where my hand rested, and something shifted in his expression. "Can I?" He gestured at my stomach. No one had asked permission before. They just touched. Assumed they had the right. The fact that Joseph asked made me nod before I'd fully thought through what I was agreeing to. His hand was warm through the fabric of my shirt, gentle as he placed it where the baby was moving. We stayed like that for a moment, his palm over my stomach, both of us feeling the small life I carried push back against the pressure. "That's incredible," he said softly. "It's weird." "That's what it is." But I was smiling. Feels like there's an alien in there sometimes. A very active alien. He pulled his hand back, but didn't step away. "Have you thought about what happens after? After the baby comes?" I try not to think too far ahead. It's overwhelming. You'll need help. Someone to watch the baby while you work, or time off to recover, or just someone to be there when things get hard. I'll figure it out. The words came automatically. The same response I'd given everyone who'd asked. You don't have to figure it out alone. Joseph's voice was steady, certain. That's what I'm trying to say. Whatever you need, whatever the baby needs, I want to help. Why? The question that had been building for 2 months finally escaped. Why do you care this much about someone you barely know? I told you about Sophia, about watching her struggle. That's part of it. He was quiet for a moment. But it's also you. The way you keep showing up, keep working hard, keep moving forward even when things are difficult. The way you didn't let your ex make you small, even when he tried. You're stronger than you think you are, Amanda. And I find that compelling. No one had ever called me compelling before. The word settled into my chest, warm and unexpected. I should get back to those Brazilian contracts, I said finally, because I didn't know what else to say, how to respond to this man who'd somehow become central to my life without either of us planning it. Take them home. Work tomorrow instead. Joseph moved back behind his desk, giving me space again. You've been here since 8 this morning. That's enough for today. I gathered my things, hyper-aware of his presence as I packed up my laptop. At the door, I paused, turned back. Joseph. What Sophia asked about my intentions. I do care about you. More than I probably should, too. His expression softened. Good. That makes this less complicated. Or more complicated. Maybe, but I've never been afraid of complicated. I left before I could say anything else. Anything that might push us past the careful line we'd been walking. But as I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I touched my stomach where his hand had rested, and wondered what it meant that I wanted him to touch me there again. Wanted him to be part of this in ways I hadn't let myself imagine before. The baby kicked in response, and I took it as agreement. The contraction hit while I was translating a Portuguese customs declaration, a sudden tightening across my abdomen that made me gasp and grip the edge of my desk. 8.5 months, still 2 weeks before my due date, and my body had apparently decided it was done waiting. I breathed through it, counting seconds the way the online videos had taught me, waiting for it to pass. When it did, I checked the time on my laptop. 10 in the morning. Joseph was in a meeting with potential shipping partners. Something about expanding routes to Argentina that Sophia had mentioned would take at least 2 hours. 20 minutes later, another contraction came. Stronger this time, sharp enough that I had to stand and pace the small office, one hand pressed to my lower back. This wasn't practice. This was real, and it was happening too fast. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, pulled up Joseph's contact. He'd told me to call any time, but interrupting his meeting for this felt like overstepping some invisible boundary we'd been carefully maintaining for weeks. The third contraction made the decision for me. He answered on the first ring. Amanda? What's wrong? I think I'm in labor. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I'm sorry. I know you're in a meeting, but the contractions are getting closer, and I don't think I should take the bus to the hospital and... Stay where you are. I'm coming. The line went dead. I managed to gather my laptop and purse before the next contraction hit. This one strong enough that I had to lean against the desk and focus on breathing. The baby had been active all morning, pressing against my ribs and spine like it was trying to find an exit. Joseph appeared in less than 5 minutes, still wearing his suit jacket, his face composed but his eyes sharp with concern. He took in my position against the desk, the way I was breathing through another contraction, and moved immediately to my side. How far apart? His hand settled on my back, applying gentle pressure that somehow helped. Maybe 15 minutes? They started about an hour ago. Okay, we're going to Baptist Hospital. I already called ahead, they're expecting you. He helped me straighten as the contraction passed, then retrieved my bags with his free hand. Can you walk? Yes, I'm fine. Really, it's just... Another contraction cut me off, and Joseph's arm came around my waist, supporting my weight. You're not fine. You're in labor. Stop pretending otherwise. The elevator ride down felt eternal. Joseph kept one hand on my back, murmuring something in Italian that I didn't understand but found comforting anyway. His driver was waiting when we reached the lobby, the black SUV already running. Joseph helped me into the back seat, then slid in beside me. The driver pulled into traffic smoothly, but every bump in the road sent jolts of discomfort through my body. Another contraction came, stronger than the ones before, and I heard myself make a sound I didn't recognize. Breathe. Joseph's hand found mine, let me squeeze as hard as I needed. We're almost there. 5 more minutes. This is too early. I'm not ready. I don't have everything I need at home yet, and I haven't finished the nursery corner and... Amanda. His voice cut through my spiral. None of that matters right now. Right now, you just need to focus on breathing and getting to the hospital. Everything else, we'll handle later. Baptist Hospital materialized through the window, all glass and concrete and promise of help. Joseph had the door open before we'd fully stopped, his arm around my waist again as he guided me toward the entrance. A nurse with a wheelchair was already waiting, clipboard in hand. Amanda Wells? She was efficient, professional, getting me into the chair without fuss. We have a room ready for you. When did contractions start? I tried to answer, but Joseph did it for me, relaying times and intervals with precision, while I focused on not screaming through another contraction. The hospital moved around us in a blur of hallways and automatic doors and concerned faces. Someone put a hospital gown in my hands. Someone else hooked monitors to my stomach. A doctor appeared, young and competent, explaining that premature labor at 36 weeks wasn't ideal, but also wasn't dangerous. That the baby would likely be fine, but might need some extra monitoring. Through all of it, Joseph stayed. He answered questions when I couldn't, held my hand when the contractions peaked, spoke to the medical staff with the same calm authority he brought to everything. When the doctor asked if he was the father, he didn't correct them, just said he was staying regardless. You don't have to. I managed between contractions. This wasn't part of our agreement. You've already done enough. Stop talking about agreements. He brushed damp hair from my forehead. I'm staying because I want to. Because you shouldn't do this alone. The labor progressed faster than anyone expected. 4 hours of increasing pain, of breathing techniques that stopped working, of nurses checking dilation and making encouraging sounds that felt condescending, until suddenly they weren't. Suddenly it was time to push, and there were more people in the room, and Joseph was beside me saying things I couldn't quite hear over the roaring in my ears. One more push, Amanda. You're almost there. I pushed, felt something give and shift, and then suddenly release. A cry filled the room, high-pitched and angry and perfect. The doctor held up a small, red-faced creature that was somehow mine. Somehow real. It's a boy. The nurse took him, began cleaning and wrapping while I lay back against the pillows. Exhausted beyond anything I'd known was possible. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Small but healthy. Good lung capacity, clearly. They placed him on my chest moments later, this tiny person with dark hair and eyes that weren't quite focused yet, still adjusting to existence outside my body. He was warm and solid, and terrifying in his fragility. Hey, my voice came out cracked. Hey, you decided to come early, huh? The baby made a small sound. Not quite a cry, more like a complaint about the general state of things. I touched his tiny hand, watched his fingers curl reflexively around mine. When I looked up, Joseph was standing a few feet away, staring at the baby with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Something raw and unguarded, like he was watching something miraculous happen, and didn't quite know how to process it. Do you want to hold him? I asked. Joseph moved closer slowly, like he was afraid sudden movement might break something. The nurse showed him how to support the head, how to cradle the small body against his chest. When she transferred the baby to his arms, Joseph's whole demeanor changed, became even more careful, more present. "He's so small." Joseph's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's actually good-sized for premature. The doctor said he'll probably be fine after a few days of monitoring." Joseph walked to the window, still holding the baby, looking down at the small face with the kind of focus usually reserved for business deals and shipping contracts. I watched them together. This man who'd somehow become central to my life and the baby I'd been preparing to raise alone, and felt something shift in my chest that I couldn't quite name. The nurse took the baby back eventually, said he needed to go to the NICU for observation, but that I could visit in a few hours. The room emptied gradually, leaving just me and Joseph in the sudden quiet. He pulled a chair close to the bed, sat down heavily. "You did incredible." I screamed a lot. "You gave birth. You're allowed to scream." He was quiet for a moment. "Have you thought about what you're going to name him?" "Daniel." The name had come to me sometime during labor, between contractions and panic. Daniel Wells. It means God is my judge in Hebrew. Seemed appropriate. Daniel. Joseph tested it. It suits him. We sat in comfortable silence, exhaustion pulling at both of us. Through the window, Miami sprawled in afternoon sunshine, oblivious to the small miracle that had just happened 15 floors up. "Amanda." Joseph's voice was serious. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." Anxiety tightened in my stomach. "Okay, I didn't plan this. Didn't plan to care about you the way I do. When I helped you in that café 2 months ago, I thought it would be a one-time thing. A favor for someone in a bad situation, and then we'd both move on." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But that's not what happened. Joseph, you said you'd listen." His tone was gentle but firm. "Over these past 2 months, watching you work, talking to you, seeing how you handle everything with such determination, I fell in love with you. Not because you're vulnerable, or because I have some savior complex, but because you're strong and honest, and you make me want things I'd convinced myself I didn't need." My throat felt tight. "What things?" "A family. A home that's more than just a place I sleep. Someone to share things with beyond business and obligations." He held my gaze. "I want to be there for Daniel. Not as a favor or an employer, but as someone who cares about him because I care about you. I want to be his father, if you'll let me. I want to be part of your life in every way you're willing to have me." Tears were sliding down my face before I could stop them. "I'm a mess. I have a newborn baby and no real career, and an ex-husband who might cause problems, and I come with so much baggage. I don't care about any of that." Joseph moved to sit on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle me. "I care about you. About the woman who keeps showing up every day, who works hard, who protected her baby from someone who tried to take him before he was even born. That's who I fell in love with. I love you too." The admission felt easier than I expected. "I've been trying not to, trying to keep things professional and appropriate. But I love you." He kissed me then, gentle and careful, mindful of everything I'd just been through. When he pulled back, his hand came up to cup my face. "Then let me do this. Let me be there for you and Daniel, not as your boss or your benefactor, but as someone who wants to be part of your family. What if you change your mind? What if you realize this is too much responsibility?" "I won't." His certainty was absolute. "I've been responsible for people my entire adult life. I raised my sisters after our parents died, built a business, made decisions that affected hundreds of employees, but I've never wanted any of it the way I want this. Want you." A nurse knocked before entering, checking monitors and vital signs, breaking the moment, but not the feeling that had settled between us. After she left, Joseph stayed on the edge of the bed, holding my hand. "I need time to process," I said finally. "Not because I don't believe you, but because this is huge and I'm exhausted and I just gave birth and I can't make life-changing decisions right now." "That's fair." He brought my hand to his lips, kissed my knuckles. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait. What if I take months? Then I'll wait months." What if Daniel keeps you up all night crying and you hate it? Then I'll be tired and still here." His expression was soft. "I'm not going anywhere, Amanda. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Whatever this takes, whatever you need, I'm staying." The baby was brought back 2 hours later, cleared for rooming in since his vital signs were strong and he was feeding well. Joseph was still there, had never left despite the uncomfortable chair and the long hours. He watched me try to figure out breastfeeding with a patience I didn't deserve, called the nurse when I couldn't get Daniel to latch properly, held the baby while I dozed off between feedings. When I woke in the early evening, soft light filtering through the window, Joseph was standing by the glass with Daniel in his arms, speaking quietly in Italian. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the sound of someone making promises, offering protection, claiming family. Daniel made a small sound of contentment, and Joseph looked down at him with that same unguarded expression from earlier. Then he glanced up, saw me watching, and smiled. He likes Italian, apparently. What were you saying to him? That he's safe, that he's loved, that no one will ever hurt him if I have anything to say about it. Joseph carried Daniel back to the bed, transferred him carefully to my arms. Basic promises, the kind fathers make. You're already acting like his father. That's because I already think of him as my son. Joseph's hand rested on Daniel's head, so large against the tiny skull. If you'll let me. I looked at this man who'd appeared in my life at my lowest point, who'd offered help without conditions, who'd fallen in love with me somewhere between translation contracts and Cuban lunches. Then I looked at my son, at the life we'd created from circumstance and necessity, and something that had grown into much more. "Okay," I said. "Yes, be his father. Be part of this family we're building." Joseph's smile transformed his face, made him look younger and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. He leaned down, kissed my forehead, then Daniel's. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me with this, with both of you." Outside, Miami continued its evening rush, people heading home to families and lives that didn't include us. But in this hospital room, with Joseph's hand covering mine where we both held Daniel, I felt like we'd just started something that mattered more than anything else in the world. 3 months after Daniel was born, I woke to the sound of singing. Italian words I didn't understand, melodies soft and rhythmic, coming from the nursery corner of my new apartment in Coconut Grove, the place Joseph had insisted on when my lease in Kendall expired, claiming the neighborhood was safer and closer to his house in Key Biscayne. I padded barefoot across hardwood floors, stopping in the doorway to watch Joseph change Daniel's diaper at 3 a.m, singing what sounded like a lullaby while our son kicked his legs and made gurgling sounds of protest. "You're supposed to be sleeping," Joseph said without turning around, somehow knowing I was there. "So are you. You have meetings in 4 hours. Daniel doesn't care about my meetings." He finished securing the fresh diaper, scooped Daniel up against his chest. "Do you, little man? No, you just care about being fed and changed and held. Very reasonable priorities." I watched them together in the dim glow of the nightlight. This man in expensive pajama pants and a wrinkled t-shirt cradling my son, like he'd been doing it his entire life instead of just 3 months. Joseph had been true to his word, showing up every day, learning to navigate feedings and diaper changes, and the mysterious art of getting an infant to sleep. "What were you singing?" "Old Italian lullaby my mother used to sing. Something about stars and sailing ships." He swayed gently, Daniel's eyes already drooping closed again. "Sophia taught it to me when Gabriel was born. Said it was the only thing that worked when he wouldn't sleep." Joseph had moved some of his things into my apartment gradually over the weeks. A drawer of clothes that became 2, a toothbrush in the bathroom, business files spread across my kitchen table. We hadn't discussed what we were doing, hadn't put labels on the routine we'd developed, but it felt like building something permanent. "Come back to bed," I said. "He'll be asleep in a minute." "Already is." Joseph carried Daniel to the crib, laid him down with practiced care. The baby stirred but didn't wake, his small chest rising and falling steadily. Back in bed, Joseph pulled me against his side, his warmth seeping into my perpetually cold feet. We'd shared a bed for 6 weeks now. Though we'd been careful about physical intimacy, both of us aware that I was still recovering and adjusting to motherhood. But this The casual touching and sleeping intertwined felt more intimate than anything else. "Sophia wants to have dinner this weekend," Joseph said into the darkness. "Her, Gabriel, and my other sisters. They want to meet Daniel properly." Anxiety tightened in my chest. "All of them?" "Maria and Julia have been patient, but they're getting insistent. Maria especially. She has 3 kids, and apparently Daniel needs to meet his cousins." He felt my tension, his hand rubbing circles on my shoulder. "They're going to love you, I promise." "What if they don't? What if they think I'm taking advantage of you? Or that I trapped you with a baby that isn't even yours?" "Stop." Joseph shifted to face me, his features barely visible in the ambient light from the street. "First, Daniel is mine in every way that matters. Second, my family knows me well enough to know I don't get trapped into anything. If they think anything, it's that I'm lucky you gave me a chance. That's not how this works. You're the one who saved me. We saved each other." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You gave me a reason to want something beyond business, to build a real life instead of just existing between deals and obligations." I kissed him then, slow and deep, feeling him respond immediately. His hand slid under my shirt, warm against my skin, and I pressed closer until he pulled back slightly. "Are you sure? The doctor said 6 weeks, and it's been 6. It's been long enough." I cut him off. "And I'm sure." What followed was careful and tender, Joseph treating me like something precious that might break, both of us learning each other's bodies in the quiet hours before dawn. When it was over, we stayed tangled together, breathing synchronized, and I felt the last walls I'd been maintaining around my heart crumble completely. "I love you," I whispered against his chest. "I love you too." His arms tightened around me. "Both of you. This family we're building." Daniel woke an hour later, hungry and insistent. Joseph brought him to me in bed, settled beside us while I fed the baby, his hand resting on Daniel's back. In moments like this, I could almost forget the complications of how we'd gotten here. Could pretend we were just a normal family waking up to face another day. The illusion shattered a week later. I was walking Daniel in his stroller through the parking lot of our apartment building, enjoying the slice of sunshine and cooler air that had finally broken Miami's relentless humidity. Joseph was at the office dealing with some shipping emergency, and I decided fresh air would help Daniel sleep better for his afternoon nap. The black sedan appeared too quickly, pulling in front of me and blocking my path. 2 men stepped out, both wearing dark suits that immediately marked them as dangerous. My hands tightened on the stroller handle, every maternal instinct screaming at me to run. "Amanda Wells." The taller one spoke with a thick Russian accent. "We just want to talk. I have nothing to say to you." I tried to move around them, but they shifted to block me. "Mr. Rinaldi has something that belongs to our employer. We thought perhaps his woman and child might encourage him to return it." Terror flooded through me, cold and sharp. These weren't random criminals. They knew who I was, who Joseph was, and they'd been watching long enough to know about Daniel. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." The second man smiled without warmth. "Come with us quietly, and the baby won't be frightened." I opened my mouth to scream, but before any sound came out, 3 SUVs materialized from different directions. Men poured out, all wearing the same dark suits, all moving with coordinated precision. The Russians reached for weapons but didn't get them clear before they were surrounded. One of Joseph's security team, a man named Marco, who I'd seen at the office, appeared at my side. "Mrs. Wells, are you hurt?" No, I'm fine. Daniel's fine." My voice shook. "What just happened?" "Mr. Rinaldi has protective surveillance on you and the baby. When these men approached, we were alerted. Marco was already guiding me toward one of the SUVs. We need to move you to a secure location now." Daniel started crying, disturbed by the tension and raised voices. I picked him up from the stroller, holding him against my chest while Marco helped us into the vehicle. Through the window, I watched the Russians being detained, hands secured behind their backs, while someone spoke urgently into a phone. The drive took 15 minutes, ending at a house I'd never been to before. Joseph's house in Key Biscayne, all modern architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. He met us at the door, his face pale in a way I'd never seen. "Are you okay? Is Daniel hurt?" He pulled us both into his arms, checking us over with shaking hands. We're fine. Marco's team stopped them before anything happened. I was trying to keep calm for Daniel, who'd finally stopped crying and was looking around with interest at the new surroundings. Joseph, what's going on? Who were those men? He led us inside, through a massive living space to a comfortable seating area. Once we were settled, Daniel content in my lap, Joseph sat across from us and ran his hands through his hair. I need to tell you something about my business. Something I should have explained before, but I was trying to protect you from it. The shipping isn't just shipping. Some of it is legitimate. The contracts you translate, those are real. But I also control other aspects of port operations. Things that bring me into conflict with rival organizations. He met my eyes directly. The Bratva, Russian organized crime. They've been trying to expand their territory in Miami. I've been blocking them. Today was their response. My arms tightened around Daniel. They wanted to kidnap us. Yes, to use as leverage against me. Joseph's jaw clenched. I had security watching you, but I should have told you about the threat. Should have been honest about what being with me means. What does it mean? It means you're a target. You and Daniel both. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm going to negotiate with the other families, establish protocols that keep civilians out of conflicts. But until that's done, you'll have security everywhere you go. Marco's team will be assigned specifically to you and Daniel. The reality of his world crashed over me. This wasn't just about shipping contracts and import licenses. Joseph was part of something dangerous, something that could get us killed. I can keep you safe. His voice was urgent. I have the resources, the connections, but I'll understand if you want to walk away. If you take Daniel and leave Miami entirely, I'll make sure you have everything you need. Money, protection from a distance, a new life somewhere safe. You're asking me to choose between you and Daniel's safety. I'm giving you the choice I should have given you before. Joseph's expression was anguished. Before you fell in love with me. Before we built this family. I should have been honest about the risks. Daniel grabbed my finger, squeezed with his tiny hand. He was 3 months old, had no idea that his life had just become complicated in ways I'd never anticipated. I looked at Joseph, at this man who'd become everything to me, who'd made promises he clearly intended to keep, even if it cost him what he wanted most. Tell me about the negotiations. What would it take to make us safe? Restoring old protocols. Families used to have rules, kept conflicts between organizations and away from civilians. That broke down years ago, but the leadership remembers how it worked. If I can convince them to reinstate those rules, to make attacking families off limits, we'd have protection beyond just my resources. How long would that take? Weeks, maybe a month. I'd need to meet with the 5 major families, negotiate terms, get everyone to agree. He watched me carefully. It won't eliminate all danger. Being with me will always carry some risk, but it would be manageable risk, the kind you can live with. I thought about my apartment in Coconut Grove, about the life I'd been building with translation work and carefully saved money, about doing it alone, raising Daniel without Joseph, always looking over my shoulder for threats I didn't know how to identify. Then I thought about 3 a.m, Joseph singing Italian lullabies, about the way he looked at Daniel like he was the most important thing in the world, about falling asleep wrapped in his arms and waking up to a family I'd never expected to have. I'm not leaving. The words came out stronger than I felt, but I need you to be honest with me from now on. About threats, about your business, about everything. I can't protect Daniel if I don't know what we're facing. Relief washed over Joseph's face. I'll tell you everything. No more secrets. And I want to learn. Self-defense, situational awareness, whatever I need to know to keep him safe. I'll arrange it. Marco can train you, and we'll make sure you're never vulnerable again. Joseph moved to sit beside me, his hand covering mine where it rested on Daniel's back. Are you sure about this? Really sure? No, I'm terrified. I leaned against his shoulder. But I love you. And Daniel deserves to have you as his father. So we figure out how to make this work. Daniel chose that moment to spit up on my shirt, completely oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening around him. Joseph grabbed a burp cloth, helped me clean up, and the mundane normalcy of it made me laugh despite everything. Welcome to my world. Joseph said dryly. Where international crime negotiations happen between diaper changes. Sounds exhausting. It is. He kissed my temple. But it's worth it. Over the next week, Joseph was true to his word. He explained his operations in detail, the legitimate businesses that provided cover, the less legitimate activities that actually funded everything. He introduced me to his security team properly, had Marco start teaching me basic awareness skills, and he began the delicate work of negotiating with Miami's other major families. Sophia became a regular presence, helping me understand the politics of Joseph's world, while also somehow becoming my friend. She brought Gabriel one afternoon. Let him hold Daniel and teach me about managing life in this strange intersection of normal and dangerous. You're handling this better than I expected, Sophia said, while Gabriel cooed at Daniel on the floor. Most people run when they understand what being part of this family means. I considered it, I admitted. But Joseph's worth the risk. He thinks the same about you. Sophia's expression was warm. I've never seen my brother like this. Settled. Content. You're good for him. 2 weeks after the parking lot incident, Joseph came home late from a meeting with tired eyes but a satisfied expression. It's done. All 5 families agreed to restore civilian protection protocols. You and Daniel are off limits to rival organizations. Just like that? Not just like that. It took negotiating territory concessions and establishing new dispute resolution procedures. But yes, we have peace, at least regarding families. I pulled him down to the couch, let him hold both me and Daniel while I processed this. So we're safe now? Safer. There's always some risk in my world, but it's manageable now. Calculated. The kind of thing we can live with. He looked down at Daniel, who was drooling contentedly on his shirt. I want to make this official. Move in here properly. Merge our lives completely. We basically already live together. I want it to be real. Your name on documents. Daniel legally recognized as mine. A future we're building deliberately. Not just letting happen. His dark eyes held mine. What do you think? I thought about the apartment in Coconut Grove that had never quite felt like home. About this house with its ocean views and space for Daniel to grow. About Joseph singing Italian lullabies and changing diapers and negotiating with dangerous men to keep us safe. Okay? I said. Yes. Let's make it official. Daniel gurgled his approval, and Joseph laughed, the sound lighter than I'd heard from him in weeks. Outside, the ocean reflected sunset colors, and inside, we sat together like any family planning their future. The danger and complications just part of the landscape we'd learned to navigate. 6 months after the Russian incident, life had developed a rhythm that felt almost normal. Daniel was 9 months old now, crawling everywhere and pulling himself up on furniture with determined concentration. The house in Key Biscayne had become home in ways my old apartment never was, filled with baby toys and translation work spread across the dining table, and Joseph's presence in every room. I was working on a French shipping manifest when Joseph appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his suit jacket off and his sleeves rolled up. He'd been in meetings all afternoon with potential partners from Barcelona, but the tension around his eyes suggested it hadn't gone well. Bad day? I saved my work and turned to face him. Complicated day. He crossed to where I sat, pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Where's Daniel? Napping, finally. He fought it for an hour. I caught his hand. Want to talk about the complicated part? Joseph settled into the chair beside me, fingers still laced with mine. The Barcelona deal fell through. My contact got nervous about working with me after the Russian situation. Said his investors don't want to be associated with someone who has that kind of heat. I'm sorry. It happens. The legitimate business side gets harder when the other aspects become public knowledge. He rubbed his free hand over his face. But it's frustrating when I'm trying to transition more operations into legal territory, and people won't give me the chance. Over the past months, I'd learned more about Joseph's work than I'd ever expected. The shipping business was real, but it shared space with smuggling operations and protection rackets, and the complex politics of Miami's underworld. Joseph had been trying to shift toward legitimacy, using the peace agreement with the other families as foundation for building something sustainable. There will be other deals, I offered. I know. It's just... He trailed off, then seemed to decide something. I've been thinking about the future, about what I want to build, not just for business, but for us. For Daniel. My heart picked up speed. Okay. I love you, Amanda. I love our son. I love this life we've created together. Joseph pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box that made my breath catch. I want to make it permanent. Legal. I want you to marry me. He opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple platinum band with a single diamond that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Not ostentatious, not trying to prove anything. Just beautiful. Joseph, before you answer, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Marriage to me means accepting everything about my world, the danger and the complications, and the fact that I'll probably never be completely legitimate no matter how hard I try. His thumb rubbed circles on my hand. It means Sophia and Maria and Julia becoming your sisters officially, with all the interference that brings. It means raising Daniel in a world where security is always necessary, and normal families look at us differently. Are you trying to talk me out of saying yes? I'm making sure you know what you're choosing. His dark eyes were serious. Because once we do this, once we're married, you're part of the family in ways you can't undo. The other families will see you as my wife, which brings both protection and scrutiny. Your life will never be simple again. I thought about the past 7 months, about Joseph appearing in the hospital room at 3 a.m, because Daniel had a fever and I was scared, about him teaching me to shoot at a private range, insisting I know how to protect myself and our son, about the way he'd seamlessly integrated into every part of my life, from translation work to midnight feedings, never once making me feel like a burden. My life stopped being simple the moment Ryan mocked me in that café and you decided to help. I squeezed his hand. Everything since then has been complicated and scary and better than anything I had before. So yes, Joseph, I'll marry you. The relief and joy that crossed his face made him look younger, more vulnerable. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into his lap and kissed me with the kind of intensity that still made my pulse race after all these months. Thank you, he murmured against my mouth, for trusting me with this. With you and Daniel. Thank you for asking properly, instead of just assuming. I settled against his chest, admiring the ring on my hand. When were you thinking? For the wedding? Soon. I don't want to wait. His arms tightened around me, but I want it done right. Family present, everything legal and official. Maybe a month. That's fast. I've waited long enough to make you my wife. I'm not interested in long engagements. Daniel's cry came through the baby monitor, his nap apparently over. Joseph released me reluctantly, but we went to the nursery together, finding our son standing in his crib with his arms reaching up. Hey, little man. Joseph scooped him up, and Daniel immediately grabbed at his face with sticky fingers. Want to hear some news? Your mom said yes. We're getting married. Daniel gurgled, more interested in trying to eat Joseph's watch than in family announcements. I leaned against the doorframe, watching them together and trying to reconcile this domestic scene with the reality of Joseph's world. We should tell your sisters, I said, before they find out some other way and get offended. Sophia probably already knows. She has an uncanny ability to figure things out before I tell her. But Joseph pulled out his phone anyway, texting with one hand while Daniel tried to grab it with both of his. The response came within seconds. Sophia's reply was simply, "Finally. Dinner at my place tomorrow. Everyone will be there." Tomorrow? I felt panic rising. That's not enough time to prepare. Prepare for what? They already love you. Joseph settled Daniel on his hip. Sophia wouldn't let me hear the end of it if I married someone she didn't approve of, and Maria's been asking when I'm going to make it official for months. But I should bring something, or dress appropriately, or... Amanda. He cut off my spiral. Your family already. Tomorrow is just the formal announcement. They're going to be happy, not judgmental. He was right, of course. The next evening at Sophia's house in Coral Gables, surrounded by his sisters and their families, the reaction to our engagement was enthusiastic support. Maria hugged me so hard I lost my breath, while Julia cried and immediately started planning wedding details I hadn't even considered yet. Sophia pulled me aside while the others cooed over Daniel and discussed catering options. "You're good for him," she said without preamble. I wasn't sure at first. Thought maybe you were just in a bad situation and he was your way out. But watching you these past months, the way you handle his world without losing yourself in it, I understand why he loves you. Thank you. That means a lot. Don't thank me yet. But Sophia was smiling. Being part of this family is work. We're loud and opinionated, and we will absolutely interfere in your life. But we're also loyal, and we protect our own. You're one of us now. Gabriel, Sophia's 16-year-old son, appeared at my elbow. Can I hold Daniel again? He likes when I make faces at him. I handed over my son, watching Gabriel settle on the couch with practiced ease, making exaggerated expressions that had Daniel laughing his gurgling baby laugh. This was the family I was marrying into. Complicated and loud and full of love that showed itself through constant presence and fierce protection. Joseph found me later on the back patio, looking out at Sophia's carefully landscaped garden. Overwhelmed yet? Little bit? I leaned against his side. Your family is intense. That's a polite way of saying they're a lot. He wrapped an arm around my waist. But they mean well, and they're genuinely happy about us. I can tell. Maria's already trying to plan a bridal shower. Let her. It'll make her happy, and you'll end up with ridiculous gifts that somehow become essential. Joseph's tone was fond. That's how this family works. We involve ourselves in everything. Inside, I could hear someone arguing about whether the wedding should be in a church or outdoors, voices rising with passionate opinions. Daniel's laugh punctuated the debate, reminding me that all of this, the chaos and the love and the complicated politics, was for him, to give him a family that would surround him with protection and acceptance. Months had slipped by in a blur of night feedings, cautious laughter, and the strange steadiness that came from surviving together. Daniel was getting close to his first birthday now, sturdier, louder, more curious every day. And sometimes I caught myself thinking we might actually be okay. I'm pregnant. The words escaped before I'd fully processed them. Joseph went very still. What? I took a test this morning. I was going to wait to tell you, make it special somehow, but I turned to face him. We're having another baby. I'm about 6 weeks along. The joy that transformed his face was immediate and complete. He pulled me close, one hand coming to rest on my still flat stomach. Another baby. When? July, probably. I'll need to see the doctor to be sure. Daniel will have a sibling close in age. Joseph's voice was thick with emotion. That's good. They'll grow up together. Are you happy? I know we didn't plan this, and the wedding is already complicated enough without adding pregnancy. I'm thrilled. He kissed me, slow and deep. Scared. Because now I have even more to protect. But thrilled. We stood like that for a moment, his hand on my stomach, both of us absorbing this new reality. Through the windows I could see his family gathered in Sophia's living room. Gabriel still holding Daniel, Maria and Julia gesturing animatedly about something. This would be our child's family too. This loud, loving, complicated group. We should tell them, Joseph said finally. Now? I just told you 5 minutes ago. They're all here. Might as well share the news while we have everyone together. His expression was mischievous. Plus, it'll derail the wedding planning arguments, which I find exhausting. Back inside, Joseph cleared his throat for attention. The room quieted gradually, everyone turning to look at us with expectant faces. We have more news. He kept his arm around my waist. Amanda's pregnant. You're all getting another niece or nephew in July. The room erupted. Maria actually shrieked. Sophia's eyes went wide with surprise and delight, and Julia immediately started crying again. Gabriel looked confused about why everyone was so excited, but joined in the congratulations anyway. 2 babies under 3 years old. Sophia shook her head but was smiling. You're going to be exhausted. We're already exhausted, I pointed out. What's a little more? That's the spirit. Maria hugged me again. This calls for celebration. Non-alcoholic for you, obviously. But the rest of us can toast. The evening dissolved into planning and celebration, Joseph's family already incorporating this new member into their expectations and excitement. I watched them pass Daniel around, saw how naturally they included him in every conversation, and felt the last of my reservations about marrying into this family ease. Later, after we'd returned home and put Daniel to bed, Joseph and I lay in the darkness of our bedroom. His hand rested on my stomach, though there was nothing to feel yet, except the knowledge that something was growing there. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For getting pregnant? I'm pretty sure you participated in that. For choosing this. For choosing me in this complicated life. For giving Daniel siblings and making a family with me." His thumb traced circles on my skin. "I never thought I'd have this. Never let myself want it because my world seemed too dangerous for this kind of happiness. It is dangerous, but it's also ours." I covered his hand with mine. "We'll figure out how to keep them safe. Both of them. All of you." Joseph shifted to hover over me, his weight on his elbows. "You, Daniel, this new baby, and any other children we decide to have. That's my job now. Keeping all of you safe and happy. That's a big job. I've handled bigger." But his expression was serious. "I love you, Amanda. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You know that, right?" "I know." I pulled him down for a kiss. "I love you too. Even when you're being dramatic about protecting us from threats that haven't even materialized yet. Someone has to worry. You're too busy being practical and handling everything with grace. One of us has to be." I ran my fingers through his hair. "Now stop talking and come here." He did. And for a while there was nothing but us and the life we were building together. Complicated and dangerous and absolutely worth every risk. Outside, Miami's night sounds filtered through the windows, and in the next room, Daniel slept peacefully, protected by more security than most people could imagine, and more love than any child could need. This was our life now. Imperfect, sometimes scary, but ours. And I wouldn't trade it for any amount of simple safety. 2 weeks after the engagement dinner, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in our bedroom, smoothing down the ivory silk dress that Sophia had helped me choose. Simple, elegant, with enough room in the bodice to accommodate the early pregnancy that only Joseph and his family knew about. My hair was loose, the way Joseph preferred it, with small white flowers tucked into the waves. "You look beautiful." Sophia appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a deep plum gown. "Ready?" Nervous. I turned from the mirror. "Is that normal?" "Completely normal. I cried through my entire wedding to Gabriel's father, and we divorced 3 years later." She crossed the room, adjusted one of the flowers in my hair. "But this is different. Joseph loves you in a way I've never seen him love anyone. You're doing the right thing." The ceremony was planned for the back garden of the Key Biscayne house, overlooking the ocean. Small and intimate, just Joseph's sisters and their families, a few trusted business associates, and Marco's security team positioned discreetly around the perimeter. Nothing elaborate. Nothing that would draw attention we didn't want. Maria appeared with Daniel, who was dressed in a tiny suit that made him look impossibly grown up for 9 months old. He reached for me immediately, and I took him carefully, mindful of my dress. "Your son has been charming everyone," Maria said. "Gabriel's been watching him while we got ready. He's good with babies. He gets it from you." I kissed Daniel's forehead. "Thanks for handling him while I was getting dressed." "That's what ants are for." Maria's expression turned serious. "Amanda, I know this world is scary sometimes. The things Joseph does, the dangers that come with being part of this family. But you should know that we protect our own absolutely. You and Daniel and this new baby, you're ours now. Nothing will hurt you while we're here." The certainty in her voice reminded me of Joseph, that same absolute conviction that family was worth any cost. Julia knocked on the doorframe. "It's time." Joseph's getting impatient downstairs. The walk down to the garden felt surreal. Sophia carried Daniel while I held a small bouquet of white roses, my hand shaking slightly as we approached the setup overlooking the water. Joseph stood under a simple arch decorated with more flowers, wearing a dark suit that made his eyes look almost black in the afternoon light. When he saw me, everything else faded. The guests, the security team, the elaborate setup. None of it mattered except the way he was looking at me like I was the only thing in the world worth seeing. The ceremony itself was brief. Traditional vows with a few personal additions. Joseph's voice steady as he promised to love and protect me and our children for the rest of his life. When it came time for my vows, I had to pause to steady my voice. "I promise to love you even when you're overprotective." To trust you with my life and our children's lives. To build this family with you, whatever that takes. I squeezed his hands. You saved me when I needed saving, and now I choose you every day. The officiant pronounced us married, and Joseph kissed me with enough intensity that someone in the audience whistled. Daniel, in Sophia's arms, made a complaining sound about being ignored, which made everyone laugh. The reception was casual, tables set up on the patio with Cuban food from Joseph's favorite restaurant, and a small cake that Maria had somehow managed to organize despite the short timeline. I moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations and trying to eat something despite my stomach being nervous. Joseph found me by the railing overlooking the ocean, brought me a glass of sparkling water since I couldn't have champagne. You okay? You've been quiet. Just overwhelmed. Good overwhelmed. I leaned against his side. We're actually married now. We are. You're stuck with me officially. He wrapped his arm around my waist, his hand settling naturally over where our second child was growing. No backing out now. Wouldn't dream of it. We stayed like that for a moment, watching the sun start to sink toward the horizon, turning the water gold and orange. Behind us, I could hear his family laughing. Daniel's gurgling voice as Gabriel entertained him, the normal sounds of people who loved each other being together. I need to go to a meeting tonight. Joseph's voice was apologetic. The Russians want to renegotiate part of our agreement. It shouldn't take long, maybe 2 hours, but I need to be there. Tonight? On our wedding night? I know. I'm sorry. But this is important. And if I don't show it, looks like weakness. He turned me to face him. Stay here with security. Marco's team will be around, and my sisters are staying for dinner. I'll be back before Daniel's bedtime. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist that surely one night could wait, but I'd agreed to understand his world, and this was part of it. Business didn't stop for weddings or convenience. Okay, but you owe me. I'll make it up to you. He kissed me thoroughly. I promise. Joseph left an hour later, taking most of his security detail with him. Marco stayed behind with 2 other men, positioned around the property. Sophia and Maria were in the kitchen helping to clean up, their kids scattered through the house in various stages of sugar crash from wedding cake. I was changing Daniel's diaper in the nursery when I heard it. Glass breaking downstairs, then shouting. My heart stopped. Every maternal instinct screaming danger. I scooped Daniel up, held him against my chest, and moved to the door. Marco's voice came from the hallway, urgent but controlled. Mrs. Rinaldi, stay in the nursery. Lock the door. What's happening? Intruder. We're handling it. His footsteps were already moving away, down the stairs toward the commotion. I locked the door with shaking hands, backed away with Daniel, who was starting to fuss, sensing my fear. Through the floor, I could hear more shouting, furniture scraping, then a voice that made my blood run cold. Where is she? Where's Amanda? Ryan. He'd found me. Somehow, despite everything, he'd found where we lived, and decided tonight was the night to force a confrontation. I pulled out my phone, texted Joseph with trembling fingers. Ryan's here. Broke in. Security dealing with it. Then I set Daniel in his crib, away from the door, and looked around for anything I could use as a weapon. The shooting lessons Joseph had insisted on ran through my head. Stay calm. Assess threats. Protect what matters most. I grabbed a heavy bookend from the shelf, positioned myself between the door and Daniel's crib. Footsteps in the hallway. Someone tried the doorknob, found it locked. Amanda, I know you're in there. Ryan's voice was slurred, probably drunk. We need to talk. Go away, Ryan. You're trespassing. The police are already on their way. Police? He laughed, ugly and sharp. You think I care about the police? I came to see my son. Daniel isn't your son. We've been through this. You stole him from me. Stole my life, my wife, everything. Ran off with some rich criminal and act like you're better than me now. The doorknob rattled violently. I heard wood splintering, but the door held. Joseph had insisted on reinforced doors throughout the house, and I'd thought it was paranoid. Now, I was grateful. Ryan, stop. You're drunk, and you're making this worse. Just leave and we can forget this happened. Forget! Another impact against the door. You ruined my life, and you want me to forget? Below, I could hear Marco shouting orders, more footsteps thundering up the stairs. But Ryan was right outside the door, and he was determined. I set down the bookend, pulled out my phone again. If he got through the door, I needed evidence. Needed something that would put him away permanently. Ryan, I kept my voice steady, louder than necessary so the phone would pick it up. Why are you here? What do you want? I want what you took from me. The door shuddered under another impact. I want my son and my wife back. I was never yours to take. And Daniel was never yours to claim. I moved closer to the door, making sure every word was clear. You abused me for 3 years. Told me I was worthless, that no one would ever want me. Then you showed up in that cafe and mocked me for being pregnant with someone else's baby. You lost any right to my life when you chose to be cruel. I wasn't cruel. I was honest. You got fat and lazy, and I told you the truth. I was pregnant and scared, and you humiliated me in public. Anger was replacing fear now, giving me strength. You've spent months trying to punish me for moving on, for finding someone who actually treats me with respect. But this ends tonight, Ryan. You're trespassing, threatening me and my child, and you're going to prison for it. The door burst open suddenly, the lock giving way. Ryan stumbled through, his face flushed and furious, and I saw in his hand what looked like a tire iron. You think your criminal husband can protect you from everything? He took a step forward. Think you're so special now with your big house and your new family? I think I'm done being scared of you. I stood my ground between him and Daniel's crib, phone still recording in my hand. And I think you're about to find out what happens when you threaten someone under protection. Marco appeared in the doorway behind Ryan, weapon drawn. Drop it. Now. Ryan spun, raising the tire iron, and Marco moved with professional precision. Within seconds, Ryan was face down on the floor, hands secured behind his back, the tire iron kicked away across the room. 2 more security team members appeared, helping to restrain Ryan while he shouted threats and obscenities. I turned away, went to Daniel's crib where he was crying from the noise and chaos, scooped him up and held him close. It's okay, baby. It's over. You're safe. Sophia rushed in moments later, Maria right behind her. They took in the scene, Ryan being dragged out by security, me holding Daniel while trying not to shake. Are you hurt? Sophia's hands were on me, checking for injuries. Did he touch you? No. I locked the door, and he couldn't get through until Marco got here. I showed her the phone, still recording. I got everything. Him threatening me, admitting to the harassment, everything. Good. Sophia took the phone carefully. This is enough to put him away for years, especially with the trespassing and attempted assault charges. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marco had already called them, had Ryan contained outside until they arrived. I sank into the rocking chair, still holding Daniel, trying to process what had just happened. Joseph arrived 20 minutes later, his meeting abandoned the moment he got my text. He took the stairs 3 at a time, burst into the nursery where Sophia and Maria had stayed with me, his face pale and furious. Are you okay? Is Daniel hurt? He pulled us both into his arms, checking us over with shaking hands. We're fine. Marco and his team handled it. Ryan's being arrested downstairs. I should have been here. Joseph's voice was rough. Should never have left you alone tonight. You left me with security and your sisters, and I handled it. I pulled back to look at him. I wasn't the scared woman from that cafe anymore, Joseph. I protected our son, and I got evidence that will keep Ryan away permanently. I did it. Pride and relief warred in his expression. You did. You were incredible. He kissed my forehead, then Daniel's. But I'm never leaving you alone again. Not for meetings, not for anything. That's not sustainable, and you know it. I don't care. He held us tighter. You're too important, both of you. The police took statements, collected the phone recording as evidence, and took Ryan away in handcuffs. He was charged with breaking and entering, trespassing, attempted assault, and violation of the restraining order that Joseph's lawyers had secured months ago. With the recording and witnesses, the prosecutor promised he'd see significant prison time. Later, after everyone had left, and Daniel was finally asleep, despite the evening's chaos. Joseph and I lay in bed in the darkness. "Some wedding night," I said. Not what I'd planned. His hand found mine under the covers. "But you were right earlier. You're not who you were when this started. You're stronger, capable. You protected our son when I wasn't here. I learned from the best." I shifted closer. Plus, I was really angry. Angry that he thought he could still intimidate me, that he crashed our wedding day, that he threatened Daniel. The anger made me brave. "Remind me never to make you angry." "Too late. You left our wedding for a meeting." "I did. And I'll spend the rest of our lives making that up to you." He rolled to face me, his hand settling on my stomach. "All three of you. Speaking of which, your daughter has been making me nauseous all day. I couldn't eat half the wedding food." "My daughter?" His voice held amusement. "I'm calling it. This one's a girl, and she's going to be just as stubborn as you. God help us all." But he was smiling. "A daughter. That would be perfect." We fell asleep like that, tangled together. The chaos of the evening fading into just another story we'd tell our children someday about the night everything changed. 9 months later, I woke to gentle sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Joseph singing Italian lullabies in the nursery. Our daughter, Lucia, had been born 3 days ago, a week past her due date, and determined to make an entrance on her own schedule. I padded down the hallway, found Joseph holding her against his bare chest while Daniel played with blocks at his feet. Our son was nearly 2 now, talking in broken sentences and completely fascinated by his baby sister. "Baby," Daniel announced, pointing up at Lucia. "My baby. That's right. Your sister." Joseph looked up as I entered, his expression soft. "Did we wake you?" "No. I just wanted to see you all." I settled onto the floor beside Daniel, let him climb into my lap. "How long has she been up?" "Hour, maybe. She's hungry, but I wanted to let you sleep." He transferred Lucia carefully into my arms, helped me position her to feed. "You needed rest. This was our life now." Early mornings and late nights, 2 children under 3, the organized chaos of family. Joseph had transitioned more of his business operations to legitimate ventures, though he still maintained connections to his old world. The security remained, the awareness of danger, but it had become background noise to the daily reality of raising our children. "I'm going to take Daniel to the park this afternoon," Joseph said, settling beside us on the floor. "Give you some quiet time with Lucia." "You don't have meetings?" "I moved them. Family comes first." He said it like it was obvious, like the past 9 months hadn't been him gradually restructuring his entire life around being present for us. A knock on the doorframe revealed Sophia, holding coffee and a bag from our favorite bakery. "I brought breakfast, and Gabriel's downstairs if Daniel wants to play." "Sophia, you didn't have to come over." "Yes, I did. You just had a baby. You need food and help and someone to hold Lucia while you shower." She set everything on the dresser, came to look at her newest niece. "She's beautiful. Looks just like Joseph did as a baby. God help her," I muttered, making both Sophia and Joseph laugh. The morning dissolved into family chaos. Gabriel appeared to collect Daniel, Maria, and Julia arrived with more food despite Sophia already bringing some. And suddenly our quiet morning was full of voices and laughter, and people who loved us. I retreated to the nursery with Lucia after her feeding, needing a moment of quiet. Through the window, I could see the ocean stretching to the horizon, the same view I'd had on our wedding day 9 months ago. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Local headlines, nothing important. But one item caught my attention. Ryan Cooper had been released from prison after serving 8 months. Good behavior, apparently, and overcrowding had led to early release. I should have felt something. Fear, anger, anxiety about him being free. Instead, I felt nothing. He was just a name now, someone from a past life that no longer had power over me. Joseph appeared in the doorway, reading my expression. "What's wrong?" "Ryan got out of prison. I just saw the alert." I showed him the phone. He took it, read the headline, then set it aside. "Do you want additional security? I can have Marco assign someone to watch for him." "No." The answer surprised us both. "No, I don't think that's necessary. He knows what happens if he comes near us again, and I'm not going to live in fear of someone who doesn't matter anymore." Joseph studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but if that changes, if you feel unsafe at all, tell me. I will. I looked down at Lucia, sleeping peacefully in my arms, but I don't think it will. I have too much to protect now to waste energy being scared of Ryan. Later that afternoon, I was walking with Lucia in the stroller through the park near our house when I saw him. Ryan, standing by a bus stop, looking thinner and older than I remembered. He saw me at the same moment, his eyes widening with recognition. I could have turned around, could have called for Joseph or security. Instead, I kept walking, pushing the stroller past him without breaking stride. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but I looked right through him, acknowledging his presence without giving it weight. Behind me, I heard him take a step forward, then stop. Probably saw the security detail that followed me everywhere. Probably remembered what happened the last time he tried to confront me. I didn't look back, just kept walking with my daughter, toward the playground where Joseph was pushing Daniel on the swings, toward the family we'd built from broken pieces and second chances. That night, after both children were asleep and the house was finally quiet, Joseph and I sat on the back patio overlooking the ocean. He had his arm around me, my head resting on his shoulder, both of us exhausted but content. I saw Ryan today, I said into the comfortable silence. At the park. Joseph tensed slightly. Did he approach you? No, I just walked past him. He didn't matter. I lifted my head to look at him. A year ago I would have been terrified. 6 months ago, I would have at least been nervous. Today, I felt nothing except grateful that I'm here with you, instead of still trapped in that life. You were never trapped. You just needed someone to believe you could do better. You did more than believe. You made it possible. I kissed him softly. Thank you. For everything. For saving me in that café. For giving me work and safety and love. For being Daniel's father and Lucia's father and my husband. For building this life with me. Thank you for letting me. His hand found mine in the darkness. For trusting me with your heart and your children. For choosing this complicated, sometimes dangerous life because you loved me enough to make it work. Inside, Lucia started crying through the baby monitor. We both sighed, then laughed. Your turn, I said. My turn? I did the last 2 feedings, and I pushed her out of my body 3 days ago. Your turn. Joseph stood, pulled me up with him. How about we both go? Tag team. We went inside together, picked up our crying daughter together, settled into the nursery's rocking chair together with Lucia between us. This was our life now. Imperfect and chaotic, and filled with early mornings and constant vigilance. But it was ours, built from nothing into something that mattered more than anything else in the world. Through the window, Miami glittered in the darkness, full of danger and opportunity, and people living their own complicated lives. But in this house, with my husband beside me and our children sleeping peacefully, I had everything I'd ever wanted, and more than I'd ever dared to dream was possible. Ryan Cooper was free somewhere in that city, but he no longer had power over my story. That belonged to me now, to the family I'd chosen and the life I'd fought to build. And nothing, not my past or present dangers or future uncertainties, could take that away.